Article written by Swati Pal about waiting for Godot. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. Repetition and recollection in Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Grappling with the text of Waiting for Godot, we often use every possible theoretical approach from realism through the absurd or existentialism, from humanism to historicism to analyze the play. Knowing Beckett's interest in the shape of expression, my critical attempt is to look for a sense of structure in this post-structuralist, postmodernist text. Let me first define the parameters within which memory will be understood in this essay. The first word that surfaces related to memory is the word past. We remember what has already taken place. But past is a term embracing a wide range of context, from the racial to the historical past, from the collective to the individual past, from the public to the private past, from the distant to the recent past, from the imagined to the real past, and so on. So, though memory and the past are inextricably linked, there are as many memories as there are past. Small wonder, then, that the study of memory is complex and one that excludes a scientific reasoned methodology. The two features spoken of a little earlier are agents that felicitate the awakening of memory. Repetition makes space for the presence of the past in the present. Repetition makes space for the presence of the past in the present. And with repetition, one's recollecting ability is put to the fore. Memory studies began in ancient Greece as a method to help orators recollect text. It led to Plato's theorizing that memory was a kind of transcendental experience wherein the ideal world could be recalled, inspired by everyday reality. Thus, reality should be interpreted along spiritual lines. This theory was used in Renaissance to help initiate understand the functioning of the universe through the usage of occult sign and magical abodes. The onset of modernism changed the course of memory studies. The changes in the socio-economic, political fields and the displacement of tradition affected one's relationship with the present as also one's connections with the past. From the sense of a natural continuous memory, the accent now shifted to an individual subjective memory. This was articulated in various ways, be it the vitalist philosophy of Bergson, in Proust's idealizing of involuntary memory, in Joyce's stream of consciousness, and not least in the psychology of Freud. Further changes occurred with the postmodern understanding about language, that meaning is neither inherent in language nor in the world of things, but is constructed by conventional frameworks of thought and language. Even our most cherished concepts and are constructs of a particular culture and time and therefore have no absolute authenticity. According to the philosophy of deconstruction, language itself is doomed to perpetual non-meaning in the endless play of difference. Such a postmodernist condition, marked as it was by instability and indeterminacy, naturally had impact on the way memory was perceived. Since everything including an individual was seen as a construct, therefore not as a whole but a combination of fractured selves, memory too was seen as a disjointed experience even though it could be traced to cultural and historical discourses. The time was ripe for the development of the absurd in literature, to which Beckett contributed through his writings, not least through the play Waiting for Godot. Arriving at the conclusion that the play could be analyzed within the framework of memory discourse is not easy because the text continually changes any attempt at placing it. In fact, the text questions the whole idea of any idea of discourse in its very formulation. Dramatic speech within it does not play its conventional role as a site for the location of meaning. The absence does not prevent the emergence of the pattern of repetition and recollection in the text, and studying this may lend, if not to clarity, to the generation of a better perception of the play. Two facts must be pointed out at this juncture. One, that what is true of this one text is evidenced by the entire corpus of Beckett's work, as Stephen Corner says. His early works show the hopeless habitual wanderings of characters struggling to escape from habit, even though they are themselves constitutively enslaved by it. I'm reading this again. Arriving at the conclusion that the play could be analyzed within the framework of memory discourse is not easy because the text continually challenges any attempt at placing it. In fact, the text questions the whole idea of any discourse in its very formulation. Dramatic speech within it does not play its conventional role as a site for the location of meaning. This absence does not prevent the emergence of pattern of repetition and recollection in the text, and studying this may lend, if not to clarity, to the generation of a better perception to the play. Two facts must be pointed out at this juncture. One, that what is true of this one text is evidenced by the entire corpus of Beckett's work. As Stephen Corner says, his early work shows the hopeless habitual wanderings of characters struggling to escape from habit, even though they are themselves constitutively enslaved by it. Subsequent characters go on to repeat with variations what these early characters say and do, to such an extent in the end that our sense of individuality of characters in Beckett's work is very difficult to sustain. The other fact that must be recognized in that since theatre is an art where performers repeat memorized text through the body, language, etc., and where they contend with the varied memories of the audience, analyzing the play in the light of memory studies is appropriate even in a larger generic context. Estragon. Giving up again, nothing to be done. The play begins with Estragon attempting to remove a boot off one foot and failing to do so. In the last lines of the play, Estragon pulls up his fallen trousers and verbally agrees with Vladimir that they should move on, the stage direction making clear that they remain stationary. Doing away with the conventional plots of drama where something is done. The origin of word drama is the Greek word drao, which means to do or act. Doing away with the conventional plots of drama where something is done, nothing happens in Waiting for Godot from beginning to end, at least not in the dramatic anticipatory sense of the audience. Proving the truth contained in the comment made on Beckett's plays that they are not about experience but are those experiences themselves, the characters in Waiting for Godot seem to be suspended in a kind of limbo. But they are not alone, for in the comprehensive relationship in theatre between performers and spectators, the audience too waits. But waits for what? Louis Gordon attempts an answer when she says, Godot then is that someone or something that would obviate the need for the games that tentatively provide a purpose in life. Waiting is a human condition in which one constructs games of or a lifestyle that masks the unknowable. The name of Vladimir and Estrogen's game is to be or not to be. And they whisper or weep over this question. Confronted with complex stage images, we, the audience, engage, waiting for Godot with responses much like those of Vladimir and Estrogen. As we progress through the time of the play, we too await a denouement, and intuition of meaning Godot. Structurally, or in terms of the sequence of events action in the text, we observe that though this is a play in two acts, Act 2 is only a variation of Act 1, almost a near repetition of it. In memory, discourse to recapitulate what has been said earlier, repetition makes space for the presence of the past in the present. But for the spectator who has temporarily cast aside his or her recollection of him or herself outside the spectatorial role and has entered into the reality represented on stage, a repetition such as in Waiting for Godot can only make things come full circle. The nature of the repetition is such that the spectator moves from immediate textual questions, who is Godot, will he arrive, when will he arrive, why doesn't he arrive, to meta-theoretical questions like why am I here and what am I watching. In other words, the repetitiousness that one is confronted with waiting for Godot does not create that sense of dramatic past that one associates with repetition. Rather, it goes two steps further and recalls the spectator in Brecht's Verfremdungseffekt mode to the world outside the text. A quick run through of Act 1 reveals four major divisions of the act. 1. Estrogen and Vladimir, Gogo and Didi's conversation. 2. The arrival of Pozo and Lucky and their interaction with Didi and Gogo. 3. The departure of Lucky and Pozo and the boys' entry followed by Didi's interrogation of him. And 4. The boys' exit and Didi and Gogo's exchanges. Act 2 has almost the same structure, some actions even being repeated identically. However, it is not just the plot and the setting in each act, but even certain words and expressions that are repeated, and the ones most repeated are forget and remember in different tense forms, ironically drawing us to that component which is vital in the actual creation of memory, the process of recollection. In Act 1, Pozo says, "Gentlemen, I do not know what came over me. Forgive me, forget all I said." More and more his old self. I don't remember exactly what it was, but you may be sure that wasn't a word of truth in it. Succeeding his dramatic outburst, this reads as a comment on his own dramatizing. It seems to question the audience, both as individual and as theatre collectively, about the purpose of theatre and whether performative time has a long-term impact on real life. This point is the best illustrated by George Tabori's 1984 production of Waiting for Godot, Warten no Godot. Tabori staged the play at the rehearsal. Each time the statement about Waiting for Godot arose, the actor playing Didi would hold up a crumpled paperback edition of the play as if to drive home the fact that his and Gogo's continued presence on stage was due to the play they were rehearsing and not because of the character called Godot. The rehearsing would build up subtly to a stage where the script could be actually abandoned, the actors finally getting into the skin of the characters they were to portray. Such a conceptualization of the play thus foregrounds the constructedness of theoretical space and time and that though theatre is an ensemble of elements, the roles and creative charging of the performers and the spectators can be demarcated. The forgetting and remembering of happenings in Waiting for Godot split time for both actors and audience into various crisscrossing zones, such as performative, non performative time. Recent past, remote past, closely connected with actual and imagined past, and individual versus collective past. This manner of splitting time, in other words, constantly underscores the disjunction between theatre time and non theatre time. Traditionally, if a play's role is to build up a certain sense of continuity through sharing a new memory of the play, Waiting for Godot overhauls this entire project of theatre. Increasingly, the spectator is recalled to her individual self and her consciousness of this self in conjunction with the selves around her in the theatre. Repetition and recollection, thus, the two attributes essential to memory making, explode from their typical usage to challenge the myth that theatre creates a unified community and that the memories made in the theatre are communal experience. Number 3. Estrogen. It's never the same pass from one second to the next. Having established that Act 2 mirrors Act 1 in almost every respect, there is a need to study the text more closely, for there are certain changes that do occur. The most significant of such developments is that Pozo appears blind so that his sight becomes a thing of the past. It becomes a memory. Memoria praeteriatorum bonorum. Moreover, Lucky, however incoherent, could at least speak in Act 1, but in Act 2 is absolutely silent and, at least according to Pozo, has become dumb. Physical decline, loss of sight and speech, is not only the alteration alteration. In Act 1, Gogo is filled with pity towards Lucky, and after his initial reluctance actually goes so far as to wipe Lucky's tears. But Lucky kicks him hard on the shins. Consequently, recollecting Lucky's reaction, Gogo's sympathy is replaced by a vengeful fury in Act 2. Then again, the boy who comes in Act 2 is questioned by Didi is not the one who has appeared in Act 1. To recollect, the boy who came in Act 1 was a goat herd, and far more responsive than the boy in Act 2, who, if he is the other brother of the is a shepherd beaten by Godot. The very fact that the messenger boy of Act 1, towards whom Godot was kindly disposed, is substituted by one towards whom he seems least inclined, does not augur well for the waiting by Didi and Gogo. Such physical, emotional and strategic developments do not bode well. Having witnessed as audience the situation in Act 1, we are in position to recognize that the circumstances in Act 1 have only worsened, and with it, whatever sense of redemption hope that Waiting for Godot may have indicated have dried up. This sense of gradual decline, which we can literally see in Act 2, is however anticipated in Act 1. Though the recollection of some parts, recent or remote, that we glean from the exchange between Gogo and Didi. For example, how long have we been together all the time now? I don't know, 50 years perhaps. Do you remember the day I threw myself into the Rhone? Vladimir, we were grape harvesting. You fished me out. That's all dead and buried. My clothes dried in the sun. There's no good harking back on that. Come on. Gogo may have painstakingly recalled this unpleasant incident of the past in Act 1, but ironically in Act 2, when Didi persistently speaks of the same memory, he seems to have blanked it out completely. The memory of what was remembered in Act 1 in such minute detail seems to have faded away, leaving one with a doubt as to whether it was an imagined and reconstructed episode or an actual event in the first place. Whatever the origins of the memory, it is blocked out because Gogo is bogged down by his now I have puked my puke of a life away here. I tell you, here in the Kakan country, there's a possibility of nostalgia accompanying his reminiscing Act 1. In Act 1 shifts to a shutting out of remembrance that arises from embitterment with a life so bleak that memories offered no pleasures. In the final analysis, though, there is no way of verifying whether the memories are based on real or imagined happening. It is certainly obvious that the existential situation has constantly degenerated. The decay into nothingness that is embedded in the play is reflected in other instances as well. Act 1, Gogo says that he is unhappy and Vladimir asks him since when. His reply, "I had forgotten," implies an infinitude, but in the negative sense, in the sense of eternal statistics. This is further emphasized in Act 2 when Gogo again says, "Yes, now I remember yesterday evening we spent blathering about nothing in particular." That's been going on now for half a century. Gogo's memory of the immediate past and his observation about it being an enduring practice underlines the nullity of existence. Clearly then Didi's words, "time flows again already, the sun will set, the moon will rise and we away from here," fails to evoke a positive perspective. Rather, it is Pozzo's outburst revealing his resistance to recollection that signals flailing spirits in the face of unstoppable adversities. In his words, "Pozzo, have you not done tormenting me with your accursed time? It's abominable when one day is that not enough for you, one day like any other day, one day he went dumb, one day I went blind, one day we will go deaf, one day we were born, one day we shall die, the same second is that not enough for you? They gave birth estrids to a grave, the light gleams on instant, then it's night once more." Act 2 may repeat Act 1 largely, but the displacements in it are telling, for these testify to an increasingly dwindling state of affairs, justifying Gogo and Pozzo's hostility towards remembering the past, which, however pathetic, is comparably a shade better than the present. Part 4. Vladimir, was I sleeping while the others suffered? Am I sleeping now, tomorrow, when I wake? Or think I do, what shall I say of today? That with Estragon, my friend, at this place, until the fall of the night, I waited for Godot, that Pozzo passed with his carrier, and that he spoke to us? Probably, but in all that, what truth will there be? Didi's thoughts read like a comment on the very act of mimesis and can be extended to question the whole purpose of the dramatic performative art in which the actors and the spectator are equally implicated. The theatre universe reiterate a point that has frequently emerged during the course of this essay, expects spectators to willingly suspend their memorized consciousness and enter into a new process of memory making initiated by actors in the concurrence with the text, which they memorize in all its multifarious aspects of language, gesture, and action that are suitable for their designated roles. Such suspensions may, to record Didi, at first sight seem reasonable until they became a habit. Watching a play may complete the performance, but to what end? On learning from Didi and that Pozo needed help to get up, Gogo says, then why don't we? Why? What are we waiting for? The play is only meaningful if the spectator too questions his or her spectating. Beckett seems to be challenging the very legitimacy of the existence of the dramatic form, its right to flourish like any other art. He reduces the play waiting for Godot to a purposeless waiting for an absent Godot by actors and audience alike, a ritual into which both enter unquestioningly. Moving out of the circumscribed boundaries of theatre from the make-believe world of the stage, is our behavior not duplicated in the limitless reality of life outside these bounds? Is it not true that with unfailing regularity we repeat acts because in remembering to follow these, we construct a certain ritualized routine that shelters us from the possible chaos of emptiness? And in following our ordered routine, do we ever stop to think where our lives are heading? Perhaps Didi best expressed the angst that such ideas may inspire when he says, we wait, we are bored. He throws up his hand. No, don't protest. We are bored to death. There is no denying it. Good. A diversion comes along, and what do? We let it go to waste. Come, let's get to work. He advances towards a heap, stops in its stride. In an instant, all will vanish, and we will be alone once more. In the midst of nothingness, he broods. If repetition and recollection are only a means to lead a well-ordered life, Beckett, through Waiting for Godot, propels us to rethink the function of memory in and out of theatre. It is as natural for a tree to be barren of leaves as it is for that tree to sprout leaves, a fact that Beckett makes visible in the two acts. The moot point is to recognize this duality of experience and locate the seeds of regeneration that lie buried in the depth of vacuity in the midst of nothingness.